Okay. Please turn to page 400. Please turn to Parshas Yisro, to the 19th chapter of the book of Exodus, of Shemot. And we are going to study the revelation at Sinai, a crucial moment in our history, in essence, our identity.
You gotta read Rabbi Korofkin's article in the CJN today. As you say that.
What's it about?
Read it.
Now you see, you leave me hanging. Not nice. Now I'm all curious. You're going to get it to me. It's your, or you at least email it. Now, our identity as humans begins with Vayifrach Be'apov. In other words, when the Almighty blew into our nostrils a soul, that's when we begin our journey as humans. We are members of the human race, and all we humans are carriers of a divine spirit, nothing to do with our Jewishness. And by the way, that defines the moment of our beginning. That's why it's so insignificant how we developed up until that point. Now, there are those that are more comfortable with the belief that there was some kind of form of evolution. There are those who are comfortable with it. So it's insignificant if our creation is the traditional approach that HaKadosh Baruch Hu just gathered the dust of the earth and created man, and there's nothing that predates the human as we know it. Or if you take an approach, there are those again that are more comfortable within, and it does not contradict Torah, that there was some kind of process, there was something evolved into the Homo sapien, and that was the being that got the soul from the Almighty. Insignificant, because the moment that defines our identity is when the Ribbono Shel Olam blows into us a divine spirit. That's when we are humans. Then we have a moment that defines who we are as Jews. That was the revelation at Har Sinai. The purpose of the revelation was not to make us just chosen because all others are irrelevant and insignificant, but rather we take upon ourselves a mission. And what is our mission? To become the educators of humanity. And that's what's taking place at Har Sinai. So we come there, B'chodesh HaShlishi. This is the third month from the Exodus. The Exodus takes place in the month of Nisan. So this is a good 44 days later. They arrive at Har Sinai, and we settle there, Neged Hahar, and Moshe Rabbeinu begins in verse 3. He ascends to God. Hashem says to him, listen, say to the house of Yaakov, relate to the children of Israel. In verse 4 we are told, you know very well what I did to Egypt, and I have carried you on the wings of eagles, brought you to me. Verse 5, it is time to follow the covenant. And in verse 7, understand that your responsibility is not to believe that you are better, but yet rather you have a mission. In verse 6, Atem Tiuli Mamlechet Kohanim, we're going to be a kingdom of ministers, of priests. We are going to guide humanity. So, in verse 7, Moshe calls the elders and he informs them what's going to take place. They declare we are going to follow. So we have the beginning of this journey of Har Sinai. Wonderful. Turn to page 404, and there's a warning here. There's a warning. What is going to take place on the mountain is quite significant spiritually. The average being, the average Jew, cannot be on the mountain itself. So therefore in verse 13 we are warned, listen, a hand shall not touch. Lo tiga bo yad. Keep hands off mountain. Big sign. Because if you do touch it, you'll be stoned, thrown down. Animals or person should not touch the mountain. However, and the last 5 words of verse 13 are significant. Bimshoch hayovel. What is yovel? Well, it means a lot of things. So it means the Jubilee. But it also means a horn of an animal, kind of ram. So when you hear the extended blast of the Yovel, which we know it means a shofar, Hema ya'alu bahar, then they may ascend the mountain. Keep off mountain for the time being. During the period of revelation, don't touch it. When the revelation, when the event comes to an end, everyone is welcome up onto the stage. That's what we are told. Fine? After the Yom Kippur service, we blow a shofar. We all wait for it. We do. I remember there were institutions, yeshivot in Israel, that were in secular neighborhoods. So sometimes they would end their ne'ilah early, but they would sit down and sing songs for 10 minutes, but only blow the blast after Yom Kippur is completely over. It's not a halachic requirement, because technically speaking, it is permissible to blow the shofar even during the twilight zone, the bin hashmashah. But nevertheless, they had an understanding that their presence in a neighborhood that has a mixed crowd attracts people into shul that do not have the background. And for them, the blast of the shofar was the end of the day, which indicated it's time for breakfast. So therefore, they would not blow the shofar until they were confident that it's permissible to eat at that time. The blast of the shofar is a significant one. Why do we blow the shofar on Yom Kippur? Rosh Hashanah, it is mentioned in the Torah. It is a Yom Teruah. It's the essence of the day. But why do we have shofar blowing on Yom Kippur? Good question. So there are different explanations given. There are those that say, listen, it is there to tell people to go have a Yom Tov meal. Because the meal after Yom Kippur is actually a Yom Tov meal. Go have your good Yom Tov meal. There are those that say it commemorates the fact that during the Jubilee year, there was a blast of a shofar that is mentioned in the Torah, because the sound of the shofar is a sound of freedom, and all slaves became free on the Jubilee. The Torah tells us that it was achieved by the blast of a shofar. To commemorate that blast, we have our Tkiyat Shofar on Yom Kippur. Another explanation. But I'll give you now another explanation for the blast of the shofar. Now, let's assess this verse again. The verse tells us, Bimshoch HaYovel, when they would hear the extended blast of the shofar, Hema Ya'alu Bahar, they can ascend the mountain. Meaning, when the show was over, when the big show was over, there was Kolot Brakim. It was a how do they call it? A multi-media show, right? With a sound show, light show, fire, like La'aleinu, like they have in clubs and basements in Brazil, with one exit La'aleinu. So it was a massive show. But the Torah is telling us so that when the show is over, make yourself comfortable. Go ahead, climb up the mountain. When was the show over? When was it officially over? Right? That's a good question. When was so let's go through the history of our people. Let's go through the history of our people. We come to Har Sinai, we get the Torah on Shavuot, on the 6th or 7th of Sivan. Moshe Rabbeinu is on the top of the mountain, right? Ready, they heard the 10 sayings, the 10 commandments already on Shavuot, but there was nothing tangible handed to them. Moshe Rabbeinu was up there working on getting the tablets with him. Without doubt, during the period that Moshe Rabbeinu was on the top of the mountain, they did not have the right to climb up. Because after all, Moshe, I don't think he wanted to be disturbed during that period of time. And there was a level of Shekhinah on the mountain. So we're going to assume that that no one had the legal right. And the show continued for the 40-day period following Shavuot. He comes down on the 17th of Tammuz. This is year 1. He comes down carrying the tablets, and he sees that unfortunately there is a show not on the top of the mountain, but the show is taking place in the camp, that they are worshiping the golden calf. He breaks the tablets, and it's a difficult period for the people of Israel. He prays for them for a 40-day period. There is a dispute among the Midrashim during that 40-day period that begins on the 18th of Tammuz, ends on the 29th of the month of Av. During those 40 days, did he return to the top of the mountain? Or perhaps he remained with them in the camp and he meditated and prayed in the camp. There is a dispute. There are two schools. Some Midrashim seem to indicate, and Rashi follows this school, that he spent an additional 40 days on the top of the mountain again. And then there are those that say, no, he spent the time in the camp. Without doubt, on the first day of Elul, year 1, he returns to the top of the mountain to get the second set. And he returns with the second set, a day and a sign, by him walking down with those tablets. The show was not so great. It was more of a private affair. But he comes down with the second set of the tablets. What did that show the people of Israel? That Salach, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you know what? Forgiveness. This is a day of forgiveness. So when did he return with the second set? Yom Kippur. Did the show end there? And then? Well, perhaps, but there's a statement of Rashi on the Talmud. And Rashi notes that you should know that the Shekhinah, the divine presence, remained on Har Sinai even after Yom Kippur. And it continued until the construction of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. Until they were able to actually build the Mishkan, which took place on the first day of Nisan, year 2. Meaning 11 months and 2 weeks after the Exodus. So throughout that winter, according to Rashi's understanding, if children wanted to tell their parents we're going to explore, and the parents say, where are you going? So if they would say we're going to visit Shevet Dan, or we're going to go see what's new among the Levim, or we're going to watch a little bit of the construction taking place, the parents would say, fine, just be back in time to eat your manna for dinner. If on the other hand the children said, we're going up to the top of the mount, right? So the parents would warn them, don't you dare, don't you dare. The Shekhinah is still there. That's Rashi's school. There are others that disagree with Rashi, and they say that once Moshe Rabbeinu returns with the second set on the day of Yom Kippur, the Shekhinah, the show ended. Har Sinai was no longer serving a purpose, and therefore the Shekhinah left. And if the Shekhinah, if the presence of God departed from the mountain, it became permissible for them to walk and touch it and even climb to the top of the mountain. Fine? If we take that second approach, so it comes out that when this verse tells us that there is a day when the sanctity of the mountain will cease, and it will be achieved by a blast of a shofar, what is that day? Yom Kippur. And what was the blast of the shofar there for? What was it trying to achieve? To indicate to the people of Israel, mountain no longer has sanctity. Shekhinah goes up, the presence of God, Kaviyachol, returns to heaven. The blast of the shofar is what pulls up the presence of God. The blast of the shofar indicates that the presence of God is returning to heaven. That took place, the blast took place on Yom Kippur. So now, if I ask you, why do we blow a shofar at the end of the Yom Kippur service? So another answer is that the shofar indicates that the presence of God is returning to heaven. And this took place on the first Yom Kippur, because after Moshe Rabbeinu returns and presents to the people of Israel set 2 of the Luchot, indicating that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you know what? I atone. We're good now. We're buddies again. Let's start building a Mishkan. That day indicated that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Salachti kitvarecha. By the end of that day, there's a long blast of a shofar that indicates that Shekhinah returns to heaven. We have a blowing of a shofar to commemorate that event. Yeah?
But it really wouldn't make a difference whether you follow Rashi or whether you follow the others. Because if you follow Rashi, it's the same day, it's Yom Kippur. But if you follow others, when the Shekhinah ascends, the shofar is blown. And on Yom Kippur, at Ne'ilah, the Shekhinah is, let's say,
Correct.
closest to us. And when it ascends, we blow the shofar.
Correct. So, according to all explanations, the shofar blast indicates an ascending Shekhinah. Correct. But there's a little bit more. If I take the approach that on that day, on that Yom Kippur, the Shekhinah ended, and when this verse tells us, Bimsho Chayovel, upon the extended blast they may ascend the mountain. If we take this verse to mean, if we take this verse as one that indicates that Yom Kippur is that day when the show is over, I think it strengthens the blast of the shofar of Yom Kippur. Because you can meditate during those moments. Number one, Shekhinah is returning to heaven. But number two, this is the exact same moment that we heard a blast on the first Yom Kippur of history, which was in the wilderness. Fine? That's how we could go ahead and assess it. So please keep this in mind. Yom Kippur, Meretz Hashem was at 7-8 months from now. Keep it in mind as we get to it. Now, the question is, Yovel always indicates some sort of freedom, jubilee. Right, the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. It's a sign. It always, we talk about freedom. Yovel, Jubilee, we are free. What is the freedom? In other words, it seems to be that the shofar blast, which takes away the sanctity from this mountain, seems to be a moment of freedom. It seems to say so. What is the freedom of removing the sanctity from Har Sinai? Har Sinai is a very special place, but at the same time it has absolutely no significance. You don't hear of tours. I mean, today they make tours for everything. But in traditional history, you don't find people going or wanting to meditate at Har Sinai. We find the Mekomos HaKadoshim, we find Yerushalayim, right? You find the significance of Eretz Yisrael. Is there significance to the mountain itself? Well, the Torah is making it clear. Go ahead, graze, go ahead, climb up that mountain, have fun, because once the Shekhinah leaves, the place is no longer significant. Comes the Mechilta, one of the earliest rabbinic sources, and they share with us a lesson based on this idea. Lo mikomo shel adam mechabdo. Listen carefully. The place of a person does not honor them, but rather adam mechabed mikomo. In other words, don't think that if you are born into a specific family, don't think that if you happen to live in a specific area, you are important, but rather what you do defines the importance of who you are. And when you become important, the place becomes important. Don't think that all you need to do in life is be born into a specific family and be a descendant of a specific Rebbe, have a nice Hasidic last name like Halberstadt or Tversky, and then you are a successful being. It doesn't work like that. You could have any last name, you could be anyone you want. If you make the right decisions in life, then you are an important person. Because look at this place, Har Sinai. Har Sinai is not significant, but rather it was due to the events that took place. Yes, it was significant for the moment. God wants us to learn a lesson. And the lesson is, do not give significance to a place that happened to be sanctified. Now, Yerushalayim is different, because remember, we sanctified Yerushalayim. We went ahead and we found it. King David HaMelech goes ahead and purchased it. There's something that we did. We humans made Yerushalayim important, right? The land of Israel is our territory, it's our homeland, we have our home field advantage when we play the game there. Eretz Yisrael is different, but Har Sinai, we did nothing, and therefore it is not a significant place. Klal Yisrael and humanity could learn a very important lesson from the fact that the mountain has no sanctity. You know, there's something very dangerous that takes place in our religion. Takes place with many religions. And that is that we can take something that is Jewish, something that's important, and make it into an avodah zarah. We can take something that actually is important and start worshiping it. For example, Rabbi Meir Simcha of Dvinsk, the Meshech Chochmah, he writes that when Moshe Rabbeinu comes down with the tablets and realizes that he is facing a pagan nation, he broke the tablets because he was afraid that if he's going to hand a pagan Israel these tablets, you know what they're going to do? They're going to begin worshiping the tablets. And that's not what Judaism is about. Not to worship these two stones, but to realize that it is there to connect them to the higher being. If you hand tablets that are important, that are quite significant, to a pagan nation, they are going to make it part of their avodah zarah, of their idolatry. He notes that Moshe Rabbeinu actually told the people of Israel that the reason I can't enter with you into Eretz Yisrael is because you have a pagan gene within you. You did not shake off Egypt totally. And if I'm going to be in the land of Israel, and there's going to be a new generation, and they're going to start worshiping me, they're going to worship me. They're going to go to him, right? And they're going to start believing that everything he says seems to be the word of God, which happens to be true because the words of God come from Moshe Rabbeinu. But if we up it a little bit more, it could enter into the realm of avodah zarah. Extremely dangerous. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu says, you guys are pagan, I can't be around. Because that will be a threat to what Judaism is about. And we have a history of people overdoing things that are important and turning it into avodah zarah. For example, turning to a rabbinic leader. It's an integral part of Judaism. We need guidance. 100% true. You want to make a decision in life, there's no question that there is wisdom, there's insight, and to turn to a person who developed their personality and is able to overcome natural tendencies due to the knowledge of Torah, it's great to turn to for guidance. But what happens if you start worshiping such a person? What happens if because they touch a piece of kugel, you start believing that the kugel has some kind of sanctity? It's very dangerous. It's a thin line. Now, something very disturbing I saw a few days ago. There's a publication, overall a magnificent publication called Mishpacha magazine. It's very popular. Usually what happens is that my in-laws read it, they have a collection, and they dump it at our place, and we're the ones that put it in the recycling bin eventually. So sometimes I look through it. Once in a while there's going to be an article that interests me a little bit once in a while. But this time I looked at an advertisement. So usually they're advertising, this is a Jewish magazine, right? They want you to live a Jewish life of simplicity. So usually they're advertising like expensive hotels and expensive furniture because it's for Jews, and Jewish values is, of course, to live a simple life. But in any event, this time they have the following. And it notes that the holy tzaddik, Rabbi Yechiel Abu Chatzira Shalita, has made, and this is in large font red letters, once in a lifetime promise. Okay. If you or anyone you know desperately needs a shidduch, your time is less than a month away. And in this ridiculous article, they promise, says Rabbi Abu Chatzira, that I have no doubt, this is hard to believe how absurd this is, I have no doubt that anyone who will receive this segula, which means send us money and we're going to pray for you, and we will pray for them during this tikkun, will no doubt get married this year. Now let me tell you why this is sad. They take people that unfortunately are in a painful situation and they pray on them. Not pray for them, maybe they do that too, but that's worthless. But they pray on them. This is what these ads are. Now, this is very, very close. Now, I don't know. He might be a big tzaddik, and there might be someone around him. There's a picture of him, and he looks like, he's doing like that. So obviously, a righteous person. But it tells us a little bit about how this system works. That the holy Mekubal revealed that according to Kabbalah, there's a unique tikkun of 1,000 shafarot, and if they blow 1,000 horns by the gravesite of Yonasan ben Uziel, there's a complete tikkun. Now this is in a rational, at least it used to be, a rational magazine, but I see this as a very dangerous direction where Judaism is going. To go ahead and believe that that's what Judaism is about, that you blow a few horns, you ask someone to pray for you, you send them, and they marketed this with brilliance, like that he has only prepared 257, meaning you have to be from the 257 first people to call. There's a number. I'm not going to give it to you because I don't think you should call. But this is the world. This is what could happen. And this is what the Meshech Chochmah warns us. This is what we are warned. Judaism should not turn into it. Judaism should not be that you go ahead and worship a person or develop beliefs that are very close to pagan, even though you value, in other words, we value tzaddikim, we value Torah, right? We value prayer, we believe in it. There's a statement in the Gemara that there are 3 things that damage a person's life. The exact mazkirin avonotav shel adam. There are 3 things that if a person does, the Almighty says, you know what? Let me check out his record. Let's look at his sins. There are 3 acts that the Almighty, if you perform any of them, the Almighty takes a magnifying glass and He places it on your misdeeds. Meaning 3 things you should avoid. Are you ready? Number 1, kir natui. If there's a wall, gigantic boulders, that is about to fall, and you walk under it, and you have faith that God's going to protect you, don't do it. It's an awful thing to do. You are putting yourself in makom sakana. That's number 1. Next one that's mentioned.
Is this in the article that you put?
No, I'm just throwing up. This is just countering what this article is about. This article is not going to mention something rational. The next statement is, the Talmud notes, if a person davens to Hashem to punish someone else. In other words, if I turn to God and say, God, punish so-and-so because he's disturbing me, so you know what God says? Oh, you think you're so perfect. Let me check your record here. Let's check through your, let me see your Facebook account and see what you've been doing recently.
Does that go for Arabs too?
Listen, I don't want... The truth is, the best way to pray is that may Arabs stop bothering us. May they do tshuva. There's no need, I think, could be, it's different there. Like, I don't want death on Arabs. I don't want that. I want tshuva of Arabs. That's what I'm hoping for. The third thing the rabbis warn us not to do is not to have iyun tefillah. Iyun, ayin, yud, vav, nun, tefillah. Don't, commentators explain, and this is what the Gemara means, do not look at prayer as something that is guaranteed to work. A person shouldn't start their Shemona saying, I'm going to pray to God, and I am guaranteed that what I pray for is going to take place. Don't do that. That's not the format of prayer. The format of prayer is a conversation with God, and to ask Him, and to believe in Him. But don't think it's a guarantee, because if you approach prayer with this guarantee that within a year all your problems are going to be solved, so what you are doing is you have this tremendous belief in who you are, that I am me and God were like that. I can ask for Him and He's going to give me whatever I want. If you take that approach, you are putting yourself in danger. Because God says, you think you're such a tzaddik? Let's check exactly your behavior. How did you treat people? How do you treat your coworkers? How do you treat society? Kodesh Baruch Hu puts the magnifying glass on you. We do not approach prayer with this confidence and a guarantee. And if you see articles like this, you know that these are not Jewish ways of viewing things. It's excellent marketing, but that does not make it a part of our philosophy. And at times, the Torah wants to teach you that lesson. Do not make an avodah zarah out of even something quite significant. Har Sinai plays a very significant role in our identity. We are who we are due to the revelation. We are who we are due to the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu appeared to us and we heard Aseret HaDibros. We had clarity about the significance of Moshe. But by God saying, you know what? After the events, when the show's over, I want you to remember, Hema Ya'alu Bahar. Walk up the mountain. Ascend the mountain. Realize that the mountain is not significant. Do not worship this mountain. And that's freedom. We are free when we realize that there's nothing that limits us to go ahead and believe that the way we turn to God is by sending funds to a specific tzaddik or praying at a specific grave. That's our Judaism, or putting a note in a wall that limits us. We have freedom because we could find God everywhere. It's more difficult, by the way. Paganism is easier. But that's how we relate to him. He is everywhere. We could have a conversation with him. Do not worship a mountain that limits you.
I'm trying to reconcile that with the concept of tzedakah.
Listen, the concept of tzedakah is a tremendous concept. It's a good deed, right? You are concerned for the welfare of others. And by being concerned about the welfare of others, you are blessed. Because when we live our life realizing that if I have the ability to cheer up another person, I have the ability to give a meal to someone that's in need. My concern is for the welfare of my people and for the world around me. There's no doubt that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you know what, this is a good guy. I'm going to protect this guy. I'm going to protect this person because they are making the world a better place. No question about it. The Ribbono Shel Olam wants us to do good deeds. The Ribbono Shel Olam wants us to go ahead and be people of ethics. There's no question that we are blessed. But to believe that if you only give to this specific person, then you will be blessed, and then you have a guarantee that within a year anything you need will be taken care of, is very, very different. Because then suddenly you are not saying that it's a good deed to take care of society, but rather if you worship, if you believe in the words of this person, and this guru, and this oracle, then suddenly you are connected to the higher being. Otherwise, if you don't believe in it, you are not protected, meaning anyone else who does not call in for the first 257 is not going to be blessed, even though they give charity, even though they are concerned, even though they are righteous. That's extremely problematic. Tzedakah tatzil mimavet. There's no question. People that, and we know so many people that do so much for people around them. Those are people that the Ribbono Shel Olam is extremely proud of. They are the ones that are following the essence of Judaism. But to limit it and to advertise that this is your answer, Veismir, that's not the way our traditional authorities view our Judaism. You have to be careful. You have to be very careful. That's message number one. Hope this wasn't too much. Are you recording this? Anyway, let's turn to page 412. After the revelation, I always mention... Yes, go ahead.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why, he uses the word shofar so many times. Why did he use yovel here?
It's part of the message of Yovel is a freedom. This is a message of freedom. Yovel, the day of... You're a free person?
Yeah, but being shofar yovel means when the shofar is blown. So.
True, but we want to use a word that's like a code word for the concept of freedom. And that's really the message here, that we are free people. There are no specific formulas. There are no specific beings or locations that only through them we worship God. There are no specific people that only by observing them or studying them or praying to them we find our answers.
But is it the only place in the Torah that the shofar is called yovel here?
No, there are other places where it is mentioned as a Yovel as well. So we know that it refers to it, but using that word specifically here, there are other places in Tanakh that we do find. The 10 sayings, we have them up here. We usually say and argue that the first 5 are between the human and God. The second 5 relate to the way we interact with society. So everyone asks the question, but number 5 is honoring your parents. Is that a mitzvah between the human and God, or is it a mitzvah between humans? And the simple answer is, the essence of a decent person is one that has appreciation. A person who appreciates is going to be a decent person. A person who believes that I deserve much more and I got a raw deal in life is not going to have a decent life and is not going to be too constructive to society. Period. And this relates to our relationship with God, and it relates to our relationship with other humans, right? There are people, I can tell you from my field, that I do unfortunately not enough, and they have the amount of appreciation is absurd. That's their personality. There are unfortunately people that we go out of our way to do things for them, and all they have is kindness. I'm sure we've met such people in such situations. Now it's a challenge. But it all begins with how we relate to our parents, right? If we go ahead and appreciate what our parents did for us, and the importance of it, and the concept of kibud avayim, if that plays a significant role in our life, the result is that we are people that learn to appreciate. And every time, Kanai Nahara, I have kids, Baruch Hashem. And I do for my kids, right? And you go, you schlep, they forget something, they lose, they love losing things. One of my kids loves losing passports. It's a hobby. He loses passport. He's a smart young man, but he doesn't know. And but the amount of work that you have to do to get them another passport, State Department is on the no-fly list, because who else would be, doing that? We do for our kids. And what I try to remember when I'm going through one of those moments of an hour, can I know for my kids? I said, boy, do I have to be thankful to my parents. Like, look what my mother, and Baruch Hashem, I have a mother, I could go ahead and give her a call and see how she's doing, because I realize this is absurd, the amount my mother did for her. What? That is not there for us. It is really, in essence, just as the mitzvot that are between a human and God are to make us into decent people, we are believers that as Jews, we must have faith. If we have faith, then we could become better people. If we are cautious with what oaths we take, if we observe the Shabbos, then we are decent people. As Jews, we need Shabbos. As Jews, or as humans in essence, we really need to honor our parents and appreciate them, because then we are a decent person. But even before we interact with society, we need to appreciate our parents. And if we appreciate our parents, right, and it's just not, even if they're not alive, I say Kaddish on a yard site, you give tzedakah to honor a parent, you study their words, whatever it is you do for a parent, if they're here, if they're not here, it makes us into beings that appreciate. Then we can start appreciating God, because we look at a few good days here in Toronto that the weather's nice, or even today when you say mid-January and it's 14 degrees outside. Thank you, Rabbi. In other words, we develop an appreciation. You go to Florida, right? There's nothing like going to Florida after spending a few months in Toronto in the winter. You say, Rabbi, this is beautiful. It's not Eretz Yisro, we know that, but at the same time we say, and of course when we go to Eretz Yisro, Kal Vachomer, how much more so? Thank God that we have the ability to hop on a comfortable plane, and within a couple hours we are in the land of Israel, when 250 years ago it was not once in a lifetime, it was once in a lifetime for maybe a person in a whole city. Those are things that we develop, and when we appreciate, we become constructive people. So therefore, Kibud Avayim makes us who we are. Yes?
Could we also not say that we believe that God is a partner in a being, and therefore it's
true. The Gemara says that Shlosha Shutfim Ba'adam, there are three partners, our parents and God, and that's who we are. And it plays a significant role. But the thankfulness, something that really gives us, and that's what you try to deal with kids. We're in a generation that's a little bit more challenging, because we're in Kumt Mir generation. In other words, kids grow up expecting, what do you mean I don't have an iPad yet? What do you mean I have to, what, and, the bar mitzvah boy does. But, a 5-year-old, 4.5-year-old expects already an iPad, because, my older brother has, so why shouldn't I have? So it's a kumt mir, and if you think about it, we're in a very interesting generation, and it's marketing, everything's marketed. They have access to see everything. The brilliance of marketing, when you turn on a TV show, the commercials, they're bombarding the kids. The products in the supermarket, they know very well that the candy is low, that the 4-year-old could see it. And that's the generation. The result is that the kid expects everything, and that's the challenge of appreciation, when in the past, the child probably never went to the marketplace, and a gift would be if the parent comes home with some nuts for the child to play, and the child was extremely happy. When I was a kid in Israel, children played with the pit of an apricot. Something called ajuim. I wonder if it's still played nowadays in Israel. Find out. That's your homework. You just got back, but I'm sure you'll be there again soon. And find out if kids still play with it in appreciation. A pit. You don't play with it. Mashara maybe. Okay, not bad. But if so, there's something we can learn from them. At least that, to appreciate the pit of an apricot, because it's hard. You could throw it, of course, and you could play with it. All kind of games. That's greatness, and that all begins with our mitzvah of Kibud Avayim. Anyway, fascinating parsha, fascinating events. Always keep in mind the fact that there's a relationship between 1 and 6, which we discussed in previous years, that 1 and 6 correlate, 2 and 7, but that's your homework. maybe I'll leave you with that for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for recording, and everyone have a good day.